All set? All set? Good evening, everyone. This is a special meeting of the Lowell School Committee for the specific purpose of initiating the process of conducting interviews for the school superintendent in the city of Lowell, in the Lowell School District. So if we could all please rise and begin the meeting by saluting the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Rostikowicz?
Here.
Ms. Scott?
Here.
Mr. Conway?
Here.
Mayor Elliott?
Here.
Mr. Gendron?
Here.
Mr. Leary?
Here.
Ms. Martin?
Here.
7 present.
If you just want to have a seat for a second, I just want to go through a few of the ground rules, and then we'll recognize the chair of the Personnel Subcommittee. So with that, as I mentioned, this is a meeting of the school committee for the purpose of conducting the interviews. There was a prior meeting prior to this of the Personnel Subcommittee to essentially lay out a few of the ground rules and set out some goals and guidelines. So with that, before we bring in the first candidate and introduce a gentleman from MASC to Mr. I'm sorry, I forget your name. Gilbert, after all the emails that I got from you, you think that I would remember that. My apologies, Mr. Gilbert. So, but before that, I'd like to recognize the chair of the Personnel Subcommittee, Ms. Martin, for a report from the Personnel Subcommittee.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. We did meet immediately prior to this meeting to go through just how we're going to try to schedule out this very busy interview week and then kind of bring ourselves to a conclusion. First thing we discussed was setting a date for our selection meeting. We will conclude all of our interviews as of Thursday evening of this week. We did have some discussion about the best time to do it. Consensus was that we will schedule it for Friday evening at 6 p.m. here in the council chambers. Should we find that we need additional time or additional information, the committee will be able to make that decision at that point. But if all things do go according to plan and we do come to that Friday with the ability to make our selection, we're hopeful that we'll be able to do it that evening. So we did make that determination. We did take some time to discuss some of the various experiences we had during the site visits and reference calls. Every member had something to contribute so that we could kind of share what our impressions were during last week when we were conducting all of those activities. And then finally, we did talk about our structure for this evening with the mayor opening up our meeting. And then each member will have their own 10 minutes to ask their questions of the candidate this evening, ask any follow-ups at that point as they go through their 10 minutes, and then pass along to the next person. That will hopefully get us out of here in 70 minutes for those of you who are counting. And then if a committee member would like to ask a follow-up question, they'll need to use their own 10 minutes to do that. So we think that'll be a streamlined way to get us through the process and give us enough time in a real dialogue to have a conversation with Dr. Kalfawi over the course of this evening. So I would defer to you, Mr. Mayor. That is the report of the subcommittee.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Martin. And let me also just open by thanking you and the Personnel Subcommittee and members who have shepherded this process for several months now. You did commendable work to bring us to this point with our candidates, and we also thank Mr. Gilbert for all of your work and in keeping us attuned and abreast of what's taking place. You did a very thorough job, and I know I speak on behalf of all of my colleagues in saying that. So with that, first I'll entertain a motion to advertise a meeting for this Friday. We'll need to post a meeting in order to convene. Motion by Mr. Mr. Leary, seconded by Ms. Rostikowicz. discussion on that meeting, knowing that if we can always postpone or convene or recess. Is that amenable to members? With that, motion made and seconded. Roll call.
Ms. Rostikowicz?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Mayor Elliott?
Yes.
Mr. Gendron?
Yes.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
7 yeas, approved.
Second is now entertain a motion to proceed with the recommendation of the interview process as laid out by the chair of the Personnel Subcommittee, by Mr. Gendron, seconded by Mr. Conway. Further discussion on the procedures for the interviews. If I could just also add, for the next consecutive meeting, rather than have we can go by alphabetical order, but typically what we have done in the past, that rather than have the same individual start with the line of questioning, the next day it rotates to the next person in alphabetical order. If there's no objection to that, we'll include this. Sorry about that, Mr. Conway. All those in favor of, if it's okay, motion to amend by Ms. Scott, seconded by Ms. Rostikowicz. All those in favor signify by saying aye, and the opposed, motion carries. Motion is on the floor by Mr. Gendron, seconded by Mr. Conway to adopt the recommendation from the Personnel Subcommittee. Why don't we go for a roll call?
Ms. Rostikowicz?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Mayor Elliott?
Yes.
Mr. Gendron?
Yes.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
7 yeas, approved.
Okay, motion approved. So with that, thank you for your patience. We'll bring up Mr. Gilbert to introduce the first individual. If I could just ask Mr. Cassidy to, on a 10-minute, if you could keep time, and then at 2 or 3 minutes, if you have something on your laptop, a timer for 10 minutes, just to ensure that all of members are that we keep as close to 10 minutes as we possibly could. If you just give us a little wave at a minute or 2 minutes, that makes sense, at a couple of minutes. I'm not saying anything about members by any stretch, but it does seem to work in other forms. So with that, I'm going to move to the well, and we would like to welcome our first candidate. Please come on and have a seat. We have some water and pen and paper for you on behalf of the school committee and also the city council and the city of Lowell. As the mayor, let me welcome you to Lowell, Massachusetts. I hope you had a wonderful day, and we look forward to the next hour or so with you. Okay, now I guess it's my turn. Can we grab you a mic, because this is televised and we need you to... Thanks. So just so the people at home can hear you as well.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. This is Dr. Salah Kelfawi, the Superintendent of Schools in Winchton, Massachusetts, your first candidate.
If I could, Dr. Kafawi, just to ensure that the green light is on so that we can hear you as you touch it.
Now it is.
There you go. And we'd welcome your opening statement.
Thank you. So I guess you want me to start with an open statement. Thank you for having me. I had a great day today visiting. I visited 4 schools and a couple of other meetings. It was great. I thank all the schools that put up with me and gave me their time. As Mr. Gilbert pointed out, I am currently the superintendent in Winchton Public Schools. I live in Chelmsford, about 15 minutes from here, according to my GPS. And I have worked in Billerica for a few years as an assistant there and director of information services. And I've also worked in a much larger district, Arlington, Virginia, and I worked in different settings. Having said that, I worked both in small districts, larger districts, and I am delighted to be given the chance to join back Lowell, which is a much larger district, and also much diverse, much like Arlington, Virginia was, which I enjoyed tremendously. So I thank you for the opportunity. I am not going to go beyond. I know you have my resume, and you've read enough about me now, and if you have any questions, I'll be very happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. The first candidate will, and we'll just move down the line. I don't have to jump in every single time. So at the 10 minutes, we'll just move right down to Mr. Jennings. So with the first candidate, first person to interview is Mr. Conway.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Doctor, and welcome to Lowell. I know you had a great visit in many of the schools, and it was a pleasure to help show you around the high school. And needless to say, you have a very impressive resume, and I certainly congratulate you on that. Now, to the questions. Doctor, if you were superintendent of Lowell Public Schools, what would be your process for the hiring of upper-level administrators? For example, principals, assistant principals, directors, coordinators, housemasters, headmaster, and so forth.
Well, I think in most cases, when you're hiring upper-level administrators, well, there are some rules and regulations with the states that you have to follow, particularly when it comes to assistant principals. Certain directors of special education is a little bit different. But by and large, in all cases, you have to absolutely be in getting all parties involved and that all major stakeholders involved, because depending on the job, you'd find many of these stakeholders working more or less to a certain degree with these individuals. So, for instance, if you're working with if you're thinking of a curriculum person, you definitely want to work a lot with the principals, with the teachers and their representation. Obviously, you can't work with all the teachers in a large district, but they do have their own representation that you want to get involved with. And you need to work with your school committee for the senior staff. You always have to bring the school committee. As I said earlier, depending on some jobs, like director of SPED and assistant superintendent, the school committee has to even be much more involved because they have to approve the contracts as well by law. So I think it starts out with the buy-in of all the people getting involved in the process and work with all the groups in trying to come up with the person that really understands the needs of the district and try to work with the person that's going to make sure they can fulfill those needs and respond to those needs.
Could you elaborate a little bit when you're talking about the groups? What do you mean by that? And do you agree with consistency with each one of these job applications or interviews, I should say?
You mean consistency of the process? The
process.
Well, consistency is definitely necessary for the fairness of the process, as well as the equality, and that's very important. I think you need to, when I mean by the groups, is the stakeholder groups that are going to be involved there. If you're trying to hire a principal, I'd find it very difficult that you can go and hire a principal and not engage the teachers within the school more intimately into the process than just the admin. If you're going to hire a principal, you just don't let the central office do it on their own. If you're hiring a business manager, and as you know, all the groups would participate in some ways, but I think the people who would participate the most would have to be your school committee members, because they're going to work very closely with your business person in their needs and reports and so forth. That's what I mean. The consistency is that the fairness, the transparency of the process, I think is very critical, because you want to be very transparent on the process, because the transparency is a two-way. It's a two-way win-win. It lends credibility to the process, but at the same time, I think it lends credibility to the candidate, because if they come in with the full transparency in the system, I think they'll have a much better chance of being accepted by the system.
I thank you very much.
You're welcome.
My next question, Doctor, is during the preparation of your budget, the annual budget, how would you include the various stakeholders from within the schools and the community, or would you include them?
You do. I'm personally a very big believer in the zero-based budget, and everywhere I ever worked, I always advocated a zero-based budget. Having said that, when you work with education, it is extremely difficult to have a zero-based budget, because when you have most of your budget is already pretty much assigned to some of the larger expenses such as payroll and so forth, it is very difficult to have a zero-based budget. But you try to get as close to it as possible in there. And by the process of the zero-based budget, you have no choice. You need to get involved with the stakeholders, because in defining your budget on the zero-based budget, it's not just a mere repeat of year after year. I think even those small portions that remain and assigned for the bigger needs, such as allocation of salaries and so forth, I think it's really important to work with the various parts. The way I do it, the way I've been doing it, is I try to get as many people involved. The last churn of our budget, we had even got together a group. There was community-based group where we brought in participation from the finance committee, the board of selectmen, parents, local from within the schools as well. It was monitored by the business manager, and we brought in people because we wanted to know what does the community think we should be doing, we should be having as a school system. And of course, internally, we also brought in our own different groups, and we brought in, I know when I invited the president of the union of teachers to our meeting, I think most people jaws dropped and thought I just merely lost my mind or something, but I didn't. I think it was very important, because when the president of the union attended with us and really lived with us all the challenges that we have to face, and it was also a member of the school committee that was designated by the school committee to represent them on the discussion of the budgets, it was very telling. It was good. It helped us a lot in overcoming many of the challenges. And I don't know, for some of you have read the news, Winchendon has been going through very difficult financial times. They had so far close to $3.8 million deficit. We had to go to the state to authorize the legislation for nearly $6 million in case it goes up that high. Excuse me. So we're going through very difficult times, and by bringing the union into the play, by bringing the various unions, not just the teachers union, and bringing the community as part of it, the first benefit we reaped out of that process is that the teachers came out voluntarily on their own. The unions, the teachers, the custodians, the paraprofessionals, the secretarial, they all came out and very voluntarily offered the zero for next year, because they knew how difficult it was in town. And they said, okay, well, this 1 year we're going to let you off the hook, and we're going to do that to help you out in the process. So I think it's really important to get everybody involved.
I thank you for that answer. And kind of on the same vein, if, and we quite often, as you well know, run into some financial problems here in the state, and it trickles down to us. And I know that some of the members on this committee for a number of years had to take a look and make some cuts and make some very difficult decisions, of course, with the guidance from the superintendent. So if funding issues demand that you cut, let's say 1% of the budget, and our budget is somewhere in the vicinity of about $150 million plus. So let's assume that we have to make that type of a cut, which would amount to about $1.5 million from the budget. What would you propose? Where would you propose to make that cut to the school committee?
Well, I think, in all fairness, you can't really get anything in detail unless you know the place exactly and have to know all the parameters. I think it would be probably foolish of me to just try to come up and say, well, this is what we always do, because every school system is different. You have to look at all the priorities that you have set out for the district. What is it that you want to do? What is it that you're challenging, and so forth. But I do have a general rule on that, and I think that's what you're probably querying at.
Correct.
My general rule is that my general rule is that whatever touches the student in the classroom is the absolute last that I would ever look at. The last 3 years that I was here, I was in Winchendon, that was the rule. we did have to make cuts every year after year because we're a minimum net spending community, and our costs are rising, and every year, that's the first thing we did. It doesn't make me very popular because I had to cut 3 years in a row in central administration. And let's face it, central administration is your most powerful group in the entity. So when you do cut in central administration, it doesn't make a superintendent very popular. But that's what I had to do 3 years in a row, because all the cuts that I had to do in central administration, for every cut that I made, saved me about 3 to 4 jobs of teachers. And even more if we're talking paraprofessionals or custodians or something like that. So my general rule is that whatever touches the classroom shall remain last, as a last resort that we have to do. This year, just to wrap it up, I know we have time, this year we have 4 teachers on the cutting block, but not because of the budget, because of low enrollment into those grades. And we're doing everything possible to make sure that we reclaim them for various other positions and not have to lose anyone.
I thank you, Doctor.
Thank you.
Could you give us an example?
Mr. Conway, your time's up.
I'm sorry? I thought I started at 3:31. I thought I had a minute and a half, but okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Proceed. If you have another question, proceed.
No, that's fine.
Okay. Thank you. My clock is ticking, so I want to move right into it. But thank you for applying. I appreciate you coming here and going, participating in this process. I did go through your resume, and it's very extensive. So I'll get right into it, Dr. Kafari. You mentioned in your opening letter that you're very impressed with the work that the Lowell school system has done. Can you elaborate a little bit more on what you mean by that?
I'm sorry, what was the statement? The first I could.
You indicated in your opening statement you're impressed with the work that the Lowell School District has accomplished. Can you elaborate what you mean by that? And as a follow-up to that, what would be your 3 priorities your 3 top priorities if you were selected to be the next school superintendent?
Well, some of the things I'm quite impressed with, and I think today's visit kind of confirmed that. I went out and visited one of your schools that moved from 4 to 1 in a relatively short number of years. I don't know of too many schools that have done that in the state, to be honest with you. I think Winchendon was, before my time, was a 4, and it took them a long time to just get back to 3, and struggling to maintain that position. So going back to from 4 to that level, I think it's really, really, really impressive, and the credit goes to the leadership of the school and all those teachers who worked really hard and stayed with the system. Another one that I think was quite impressive and be delighted to be part of it is I know that you have been you've been receiving more and more and more intakes of ELL students, and with the we all know that the states and federal don't quite help you that much. They don't help anybody that much. And it is very impressive how you can pull it off with such a large community, and you're still, doing a good job, relatively speaking, in the schools with those levels. I think it's quite impressive. And that's part that really gets my interest and my desire to be a part of it, part of that success. As far as the 3 priorities, when you follow up, I definitely think that one of the top priorities is how do we get to continue doing a good job and improve upon it if we can on the ELL part, and making sure that we just don't talk about diversity. I think diversity is a really important thing. We need to talk about it. However, we need to move the dialogue not just from diversity but full inclusion. And I think that's where we start reaping the benefits, is when you're talking about a good, successful model of inclusion, not just the diversity. So that's definitely would always remain with me as a priority. I am a product of ELL. As I said earlier today to when I visited, when I first came into this country, I did not speak a word of English, or very few, at least just the ones you hear in the Hollywood movies. I had a different language, and I think I understand what it is, that you move from one one stage to another. And I think it's really important that we keep that as a priority to the school, for the schools. I think in the second priority is your facilities. I see that when I'm looking at your trends of schools, and if we are to expect those bumps coming as well, I think you have to have a serious look at the facilities and set your priorities on how to maintain the facilities and how you're going to be able to deliver a safe environment to the children. You have a follow-up? Go ahead.
So those are two. Do you
Yeah,
have?
I thought you were going to say something.
No.
I'm sorry. My third priority remains always the academic. How are we going to make sure that those schools that achieve those great successes are going to remain doing so, and those who need help will do? And I do believe very strongly, I think with every fiber in me, that if you really want to help the academics, you start with the teachers, with the professional development and of the teachers and of the school leaders. It is very crucial, absolutely crucial, to keep helping those teachers help our students.
Thank you, Doctor. So following up, that you've touched on a couple of other questions that I have. The city does have some very good success stories that you mentioned. I'm not sure, which school did you visit today?
Merkland?
The Merkland? Oh,
One of
very
them.
good. We do have some very good success stories. Unfortunately, we also have many schools with not as good success stories that present serious challenges for the district. How do you go about taking those schools out of level 3, even across the board? What is your style? What is your approach to taking these schools? Because I think that is a message that we want to clearly improve on, and I think we need to do it by leaps and bounds. Not we have some gradual increase in some schools some years, and then we either have some reductions or regression in others. So what is your approach to across the board, as much as we can, increasing the level?
I think the first thing you want to look at is how, first of all, why do you have the successes in some and why you have not in the others? I think that's the first thing you want to understand is why is that so? I'm sure there are reasons, very valid reasons for that.
And do you have experiences in your school district
We
with, and have you identified
Right.
the components of those?
I think so,
successful
yeah.
schools?
I think when just to give you the example of the latest one in Winchendon, when we had similar challenges. We had some schools that were okay, and one school was just doing okay, and a couple schools really needed help. And we were level 3, bordering level 4 in 2 of our schools. And the first thing you want to do is just go straight directly to the problem, which is your curriculum. And why is this? What is driving that? What is driving the lack of progress? Is it the curriculum itself that needed to be revisited? You have to have a thorough look at that in detail. You have to go, and that's what I say, it doesn't really matter whether you work in a very large system, whether you work in a very small system. At the end of the day, when it comes to the school, you've got to work directly with the school leaders and the school teachers. In my case, when I went down and worked directly with the schools, in the case of the middle school, for instance, it was very clear that one of their weaknesses was in math, so we wanted to understand what was the problem. And so it ended up being a realignment of the curriculum throughout not just the middle school and the high school, and also looking at the feeder school, the elementary schools. In the high school, there was a combination of discipline problem and training of the teachers. I think in a discipline problem, we were able to address it very, very successfully. And those people who visited would tell you they talked directly to the alternative school that we had set up to relieve the discipline problem and attend to those kids individually. I'm a strong believer of individualized instruction. As much as you can get close to it, it's not always possible, it's very expensive. But that's what you do, is you get to work with the schools directly on and identifying exactly what is the holdup, what's holding you up, what's holding you back. Is it a discipline problem? Is it a training problem? Is it a curriculum and a problem that we don't understand exactly what to do, or is it the delivery of the curriculum? And in each case, it's a little bit different, and you have to work directly with the teachers on this one. You've got to get your people involved with this one. All your people in the service. My rule is, when I was in Arlington, I had a staff of 112 people, and my requirement is, yes, you work in the central office, but I want to see every one of you do a visit once a week to the schools.
So in any cases, have you found that that is a leadership issue? At the
Yes,
top
we
level?
did. We did. In one of the high schools, one of the earlier was clearly a
Okay.
leadership issue,
Okay.
and we had to deal with that.
Thank you. I didn't mean to cut you off. I just got the 2-minute sign, and I got a lot of questions for you. So let me ask you just, what is your experience, successful or not successful in negotiating union contracts?
My only experience in negotiation of contracts is not in Winchendon yet. We did actually do the secretaries and it was just for 1 year, just the salary, not the contract. This would have been the year of the contracts for all of them.
Right.
And they have accepted to extend their contract with a 0.
They
So
have.
we're not doing any negotiations. When I was in Billerica, I was part
That's
of
okay.
the...
Can I cut you off there? I'm sorry. You answered my question. Because I want to squeeze in
okay.
a couple of more here. We have a serious overcrowding issue here in the city that the school district is going to be faced in the next year or so, with no plan in place and no plan essentially presented. What would you do? What would be your plan? I mean, time is marching. We have newcomers, 300 to 400 coming every year. We are literally busting at the seams. How would you address it?
Well, the first thing you do is just what you said, is start your plans. Get involved with those discussions. If you have already solid numbers of forecasting, I think you want to start talking with that by getting all the community that you can get involved, all community parties, whether it's you don't have selectmen, you have council, the city council involved, and all the stakeholders involved with that discussion very, very earlier on.
Okay.
Otherwise, you're going to end up with trailers.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate that. And lastly, very, very quickly, we have a city manager, we have an auditor, we have a city clerk, all who work without a contract. They are covered by city ordinances that provide all benefits, but there's no contract. I don't believe in contracts. I have supported them in the past. I don't believe that they work. Would you work without a contract? Would you consider a contract knowing that there are I'll stop right there.
I believe that you work because you do a good job and people want to keep you. I don't really, I'm not contract, no contract. Even if I did have a long contract and we don't get along, I think I have to look for, we must depart ways. I think it's best for everybody, whether you have a contract or not. A contract is nice, but does it really matter? It's your work that keeps you, it's not your contract.
Thank you, Doctor.
You're welcome.
My turn. Thank you. I'm going to start my own personal clock now, just so I can maintain it. So, Mr. Kalfawi, thank you very much for being here tonight. I had the opportunity to sit on your site visit for a little bit, and we had a chance to catch up a little bit today in the mayor's reception room. So it was good to meet you.
Thanks.
Get right to it. I have a few specific things I want to ask related to your resume. The first thing that pops out of me, you touched on this a little bit, but I'd like to go into a little more detail, is the fact that you have cut over 2 years the budget by 5% while improving the efficiency of our curriculum delivery and management systems. And I might say that all the union leaders that I spoke to at the site visit and all the administrators seem quite happy with your responsibility, with what you've done there. So it seems like somewhat of a minor miracle to me. So I'm wondering if you can explain how you accomplished such a thing.
Yeah, I think it's not really a miracle. It was long overdue. We had the district years back was so much larger than what it is now. With the trends going downward trends of enrollment, we lost the students, we lost the teachers because it's just getting smaller, but the administration remained the same. And it is a very difficult topic because those administration, the staff that was there was, many of them was for a long time. So one of the things that I did was, we had to stop that. Every time you have to make cuts, we go straight to the teachers and we ask all the principals, give me the 5%, give me 3%, whatever the cut is. We said, no, let's revisit. Let's just pretend that it is a zero-based budget process, and we're going to start from the beginning. What is it that we really need? So the early cuts that we made were all That wasn't a miracle. It was just administrative cuts that needed to be done because they were long overdue from a time that we had so many more students and teachers.
Okay, great, thank you very much. So in looking through your resume, I see you've been in Winchendon for about 3 years. Prior to that, you were in Virginia for about 3 years, and then in Billerica for 3 to 4 years, and then managing director for Innovative Center for Excellence in Dubai for 2 to 3 years. Before that, 2 years. Before that, 1 to 2 years. Before that, 2 to 3 years, bringing us back to the year 2000. So give me some confidence that you're not looking at Lowell as another 2 to 3 year stint.
Yeah, he just
in
said he
your
doesn't
career.
like long contracts, so that would have been your confidence.
Looking for longevity.
No, I think, no, yeah, I mean, every one of these was more of a success story than it is anything else. I think in Billerica we did a great job, and I was there very happy for 3.5 years, and I know that some of the administrators we worked with, teachers, were all quite happy. And I had a great opportunity to go to a much larger district in Arlington. As I said, Arlington is nearly twice the size of Lowell, and I couldn't pass on that opportunity, even with the blessing of the school committee. And I still get along very well with them. It's still home. I go there, and everybody welcomes me to get there. I think it was a change that I needed to do. It was good for my career. When I left Arlington, it was really not with my will. I mean, they didn't want me to leave, and I didn't want to leave. It was thanks to the Massachusetts legislation that tinkered with our retirement, and I had to get back to reintegrate Massachusetts retirement before April 1st of 2013. That was really the main reason. I think if they had never passed those laws, I'll probably still be in Virginia at this time. Any time before that, I think if you look in my years in Dubai, it was really most of it under the same umbrella while I was there. I got recruited to do the same thing that I had done in Gale Montague. I was the founder of Technology and Education Partnership, which was extremely successful in Franklin County, putting all the districts in the county together. And I got recruited to redo that experience in Dubai, which I couldn't pass.
So thank you. I understand your move from Billerica for a better opportunity in a big district. I understand your move from Virginia back to Massachusetts. We actually talked a little bit about this earlier, so I won't make you say it again. But basically, there was a retirement issue where you had to get back into the Massachusetts system in order to take advantage of that. But now you're in Winchendon. You're the superintendent there. Everybody seems to like you. You've done a good job. Why move now to Lowell? What would be your rationale?
Well, I think my rationale is very simple. I'm very drawn to going back to working in a larger district. There is so much more that you can do when you have professionals around you to work. And there's absolutely the diversity factor is one of my biggest attraction. And I have to admit to you that there is a selfish interest also being local, living 14 minutes away from here, 15 minutes away from here. I think it's really important because, and it's not so much just the drive, I don't really care. I commuted all my life, it's not an issue. I think the issue is the engagement with the community. If you want to be a successful superintendent, you've got to be truly, truly engaged with the community. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't help you much if you live an hour away from the community. You can do it, I've done it. You can do as much as you can at the great cost of your own personal life. But I think if you can be, the more you have opportunity to be more engaged with the community. Mm-hmm. If you're doing a budget, you'll find that will help you. If you're doing anything else in the community, in your school, I think when I was in Billerica, that was the secret of my success. I mean, people here are from Billerica will tell you, we passed the first override ever, technology override, non-related to building schools in Billerica for $1.7 million. That was done because of engagement with the community. There wasn't a single group that I didn't belong to or worked with. With my abbreviated first name of Sal, I even participated in the American Italian, community. They adopted me. That was fine. But we got everybody's support. We got the commitment of the community.
Great. Okay. Well, you kind of led right into my next two questions, and that is first the technology background. You have a pretty extensive technology background in a lot of places where you've worked, and you talk about the success that you had in Billerica, moving them from a bottom 5% ranking to a top 10% ranking in a statewide analysis. Do you know where Lowell lands in that ranking?
It's still,
and what would you do to raise our level?
I I don't know what it is exactly now, to be honest, because I haven't seen the trend, or the same trend that you're referring to is the Boston ranking that they do every year, Boston Globe ranking that they do every year. But having gone through the schools and talking to a few people, you do need some work to be done, and I think that would be something that I would love to get involved with, and leading the district. I think you do. I think you have some work to do to bring that opportunity to the student. I think it's really important to get the student ready for that, because they're going to go to colleges or going to workforce that demands that. And if we are to train these students to be ready for that, and as you know, with the park and so forth, that's a priority today. You must include that. You cannot neglect it too long, and you need to find the ways that you can afford the funding for it, that you can afford the opportunities for it, and the PD, the training, and also enable the delivery of the curriculum through modern technology. I think you cannot afford to neglect it.
Okay.
It's just the way we are.
And my final question was, unless you answer this in less than 2 minutes, then I might have another one. How important, and you already alluded to this, but how important is it for a superintendent to be involved in the community, meaning business groups, community organizations, and citizens groups?
It's very important. It's a world of difference. I mean, I walked into Billerica, I didn't know a soul, because I raised my kids in Western Mass. I didn't know anybody. And within I came in on January 27. In May, we got the vote for the override. We got it by, I think it was a 240 member. You got it by 97% or something like that. Huge support for the schools. How did we do that? By the engagement into the community. As I said, those few months, there wasn't a single group, a community group, that I did not visit or attend or talk to. And we engaged the parents. The parents fought very hard for that. It is hugely important to get involved in the community. If you do not want to get involved as a superintendent in the community, I think you're better off finding another career path.
Okay, thank you. And finally, since I have a little bit more time, I know I said finally once before, I was intrigued by this item in your resume about the virtual school collaborative that you did in Winchendon. What's that all about?
Well, what it is
Tell me
about, the
what that-
state had come up last year, if you recall, with 5 licenses to bid for becoming the Massachusetts virtual school. We were one of the group. We're a very small district, so we worked together with 2 collaboratives grouping 17 districts together. Myself and the superintendent of Leominster, Jim Jolliker, we got together and we put together this idea. We were going to bid for one of the licenses until we had a discussion with the commissioner and Mr. Rodriguez, who is I think he's in charge of the program there, only to find out that what they were really asking us to do is to put together for them a charter school, an online charter school, and lose more students and lose more funding. So we proposed to go our own way, and our own way was clearly to establish a hybrid model. So now it's serving all the districts of the 2 collaboratives, and that's what we've been doing.
Well, that was subtle. But I think you answered all my questions
Thank you.
effectively in 10 minutes. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Go. Dr. Kafawe, thank you very much for coming here tonight.
Thank you for having me.
I appreciate, I was also involved in your on-site meeting. Mr. Jenner and I actually used an old-fashioned technology called the telephone
Yes.
to join in that, and it was very, very positive. So welcome all the way from Chelmsford to Lowell.
Thank you.
My big question really is one of the biggest, probably the biggest job that you actually do is hiring principals and then really evaluating them. Can you tell me a little bit about your philosophy about what type of individuals are you actually looking for to lead your schools? And can you give me some examples of you actually hiring people and how you help to mentor and evaluate them?
I think it goes back. It's the same general principle that I have. Is the first thing you look into principal is how do they work with children, and how do they view working with children, and how do they work with the teachers, because they're going to be the instructional leader, and they need to absolutely rally those teachers and support those teachers. I think that's the first thing you want to look into in a principal, how to do that. Now, each school is different. There is no cookie cutter principal. Each school is going to be different depending on the culture. That's what I said earlier. It doesn't really matter how big The process has got to remain the same for transparency and fairness. But when it comes to to looking at individual needs, you've got to look at each school differently. At each school, you have to absolutely capture what is the need of that school. So you've got to get your teachers involved, you've got to get your parents involved, and depending on the school age of the kids, so if you're talking a high school, I think it would be worthwhile getting some of the students involved as well in defining exactly the needs of what you're looking for specifically. What are we dealing exactly with the current need of that school? So there is no specific cookie cutter or specific formula looking for a principal, but the first and foremost rule that you look for is a person that truly has the kids at their first interest, and also, very important, a person who can lead those teachers, work with the teacher, and gain the trust of the teachers. You do not look for, when you're looking for an administrator, for a principal, you do not look for an administrator, you look for a leader. There's a big difference between the two. And that's what you really need to look for.
But you spoke a little bit about Winchington, and I forgot what question it was, but there was a question of potential leadership issues in one of your schools. How did you deal with that? How did you diagnose it? And then what type of action plans you put in place to resolve it?
First thing you diagnose it is you want to make sure as a superintendent that specifically in your first 3 months before you get to know everybody, is you really got to spend them all in the schools. You know, I know everybody else is important, but I think you have to get to know your schools first and foremost, and that's what I had done. And I could feel it. I could feel it right away. The level of anxiety, the level of angst, the level of lack of trust from the part of the teachers in the direction taken by the school at that time with the school leadership. And at the same time, you look at it as well in the results, and you talk to parents and so forth. And that's exactly what I did. And at the end of the day, it was very clear the person did not deliver to the expectation of the community, the expectation of the parents, and also did not lead properly the teachers to what they needed to do. So you just have a very honest discussion, which I did, and I said, I think you should really look for a job for next year. Would be good for you to know. But I made sure that they know far in advance, so I'm not hitting them last 30 days telling them about it. And following that, we had also a couple of retirement, and we had fantastic principals. I think some of them you had a chance to meet. We had some really good principals. We have some really good principals right now.
Just following up with Mr. Gendron's question regarding the collaborative you worked with the town of Leominster to put together. How effective was that in achieving a level of raising your grades or raising your scores on MCAS, or did you see any real objective
The collaborative
success?
or the alternative school?
The collaborative.
The collaborative. I think it was really important because, and of course I have a biased view, I with my technology background and so forth, when we put that collaborative together, we insisted on a hybrid model of delivery of an online. I'm not a believer on the pure online. It's never going to happen for our age group that we work with in K through 12. You really need to work with the hybrid model. And it allowed us, when we put it together as a collaborative, it allowed us to do it because any one of us was way too small to be able to do it. You need somebody as big as Lowell to do it on their own. So putting together all these districts, working together with Fitchburg, Leominster, Gardner, and so forth, we were able to, each one of us, leverage the strengths that we had. And let me explain. It's a hybrid model. If I'm offering one of my classes happens to be geometry, for instance, it's a model. I don't know if you've ever seen it. There are some. It's what we call the coaching and a flipped model. And so my hybrid. So I'm going to be the one who's, let's say, my school system supplies the teacher of record and the teacher who's going to follow these students as a coach. Some other district may offer somebody else. It allowed us to now offer so much more than any one of us alone can do. This is a model that I've in those days, we didn't have the online capability we have now back in the 90s, but that's exactly why I started the Technology and Education Partnership in Franklin County, by doing exactly that. That's why I had founded the partnership then, is to be able to leverage the strength of all the districts. We worked with Greenfield and Deerfield and all of these this district back then, and it worked then. It wasn't the online we do now. We used to call it, we were one of the first recipients of the virtual high school grants, and it worked then very well, and this is working really well for us. How it helped us, I give you an example, is we're using it now for college credit recovery. We're using it in the alternative school as the mode of learning, and it made a world of difference, I think, for our kids to work, especially when they're working, those who need that little push, that individual push, to have a teacher act as a coach, as an interventionist, to work with them and have a very strong model they can rely on, something that is consistent, something that is all the way through the same, and demands the same quality as it is 100% compliant and aligned with the Mass Core as well.
Just a final question. I think a lot of good questions tonight and a lot of good feedback from you, and I think that's positive.
Thank you.
How do you interact and work with your school committee in Winchendon? How do you develop relationships with essentially elected officials in your town, and how would you foresee developing relationships with elected officials in the city of Lowell if you were to come here?
I think the only one word that I would give you that really describes in all these situations is transparency. You have to be fully transparent, whether it's a good news or a bad news. One of the things that I know from my own interacting with officials, whether they're school committee or board of trustees or whatever you work with, the last thing they really always want to hear is hear it from their neighbor, or in Dunkin' Donut or Starbucks or something. They want to hear it from you, particularly if it's something that relates to the school. So I think transparency is very important. It doesn't mean that I will always agree with you. It doesn't mean that I'm always going to be Mr. Yes Man, I have to please you. It just means that you're going to hear it, whether it's good or bad. You're never going to have it sugar-coated. You'll hear of it. And hopefully that cooperation will bring the people together to work with. I've had a wonderful relationship, I still do. And I know your visiting team had a chance to talk to some of our school committee members. I think if you're transparent and you don't surprise the people you work with, and you know very well the role of each, and you have to work with each one of them, respect their role and their responsibility in the district, and they respect yours. And I think it makes up for a very good relationship. I think with respect to the rest of the committees in town, whether it's the finance committee or in our case it's a board of selectmen, I think it's equally the same. It's the same. It's an issue of transparency. Before I got to Winchendon, the two never talked. They didn't really like to even communicate, even during budget times. And I think it's really important. It really made a difference when we brought them into the process and said, no, we do want to hear from you and work with you when we're building our budgets. And that alone made a huge difference in interaction with them. And my budget that I put out the first year in Winchendon was the first budget ever. There was a line item fully, because before that, it's a net school spending, so you don't really have to show them anything. They have to vote anyway. But it wasn't about getting the money. It was about making sure everybody understands clearly what we're doing with the money, their money, the taxpayers' money.
Dr. Kilfawe, thank you very much. I appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening.
I have to thank you first off as one of the members who was able to go out to visit Winchendon. Certainly a very impressive group of individuals you gave us to talk with. It was a great tour, and really, I think I know I said it to you too, across the board, everyone I think really gave us some great information, but the kids especially really gave us a great insight into your style and your accomplishments there. My first question would be, if you were describing to this committee and to this community your kind of overarching theory of education, when you think of the pedagogy that you find most effective, if there's any kind of specific research or theories that drive your educational method, to kind of give us a sense of where you come from from that perspective.
I alluded a little bit to it earlier, if you remember when we were talking about the budget part, is if you can, and I think ideally if I had a choice, if you had unlimited funds, I'd say I'd go for individualized learning at any time, that every student will have the ability to have a coach. That's what I want to do. We know it's not possible. You know that financially no community can do that yet. But we can try to get as close as possible to that. We're going around 360 degrees, and we're coming back in education. If you notice, we're coming back to that model of close to individualized learning, where we focus on the kids. Remember the good old schoolhouse that we watch on the Little House on the Prairie, where in one room you have grades K through 12 in that? And how did the teacher do that? That's called individualized teaching and individualized learning. And I think we can't do that. We can't have little schoolhouses on the prairie right now. But we can definitely try to bring our students as close to teachers, support them to do that, and support your teachers to get as close as possible. We know that the theory works. We know that some of the successful models are all based on the tier instruction. There's a reason for it. Is because it gets us as close to that as possible. Tiered instruction is just a step closer to the individualized instruction. So I think that remains always my model. And I think the second piece that I always want to plug in there, we live in a world that we have so much good information, as we have so much bad information too, online. And I don't think that the schools that we're doing yet a very good job at tapping on that source of information. And we need to do that. We need to be able to leverage what's available out there and turn our teachers much more into other than the lecture, the old lecture style, more to coaching model. And we've tried that in some of our classrooms where we turned on some of our students to the Khan Academy, where the teachers really got onto the Khan Academy in mathematics, for instance, where it was extremely helpful for the students to have that continuous learning going on. Now, yes, you do have the challenges of the financial challenges. When you start talking about technology, you got to be very careful what you do, because you don't want to create yet another corporate cold, digital divide there. I think you have to be careful that you want to make sure that you have the plans to back up learning for all, not just for the very few who can afford it. But I would be very heavily influenced by the model of tiered instruction and individualized learning.
In Winchendon, much like here in Lowell, you've implemented the new teacher evaluation process, as was directed by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. While we were there, it was certainly one of the questions I asked all of your direct reports about how that process was implemented and how you helped them to then implement it with their staff people. Could you give me your impressions of how it was done in Winchendon, how you feel you were successful, if you do, and what you would kind of envision in taking that to scale here in the city of Lowell?
When I was very lucky, because that process was actually started by my predecessor and had already negotiated all with the unions, so all the unions were in agreement with it, so it was great. Because when I stepped in, into a model that everybody was already in agreement with and supported. So it made a world of difference for me. It was just a matter of implementing it. Having said that, like any evaluation model, you want to be very careful that it doesn't turn into a checklist model, because the checklist model is going to hurt you. It's really going to hurt you. It doesn't, it just does the wrong things for you, and not the intended. But you want to be careful that evaluation model, and I've talked to the people who are designing that model at the state level, was never designed to necessarily punish people or fire people, or that's not about that. It's about how can we then help you? Where do you really need your help? And I think that ought to be your first focus. So the process, yes, is important, as every time we talk about processes, how important it is for the process to be transparent, to be fair and equal to all. But at the same time, please don't let the process be your end goal, what you're looking for. Because what you're really looking for is for the teacher to get the feedback that they need to have to be better in the classroom, and an accountability to not just the administration versus the teachers, but to the parents too, to the community. That why do you think that the state likes to publish them over their website? Is an accountability back to the community. So I think it's really important. I strongly believe in evaluations. I think it's important, but let's not make the process be the end all, and all we care about is the process. Let's be flexible, and let's stay focused on what the intent is and the content areas. Thank you.
If, you know, and obviously we did have a certain opportunity to do this, but what would you imagine would be kind of the community of Winchendon or Billerica or Arlington, wherever you worked? How do you think they would describe you as an educator? People
Me
who-
as
yes.
an educator?
Not me.
I think they would tell you. I think they would tell you that I'm very approachable, and that my door is always open. I am a fighter. There's no doubt about that. I think you've heard enough about it. When it comes to the school, I will demand accountability from anybody. It doesn't really matter who they are. I would demand accountability, and I would demand what the school deserves to have. And they will tell you that I do get involved very, very much, as you saw in the classroom, or teachers or students. I get involved with students. I find it often go have lunch with the students and ask them how things going and what do they think and what can we do better and so forth. I think the first thing they will always tell you is that I'm actually, I look tough, but I really am not. I'm quite easy to work with, and that I do listen a lot. I do listen a lot, and I'm very, very collaborative working with people. I do look for consensus whenever, whether in any time I worked in a school, I worked with school committee, school district, I strongly believe in consensus, but I always remind people that consensus definition is something we can live with. Doesn't mean that we all agree with that, but something that once we agree with it, once we agree to go with that consensus, we need to really all support it.
My last question. Should we move forward and you come here to Lowell, what would you really see your first 30 days being devoted to?
I think my first 30 days, I don't even have to think about them. They're going to be spending a lot of times in the schools to get to know your schools. Today I've seen only 4. And to make sure, and I know you're going to need a lot more than 30 days to really get to know them. That's first and foremost. They spend a great deal of time in the school talking to students, trying to find some opportunities to talk to parents, and probably look at the principals to help me do that, get to know parents. But I think the other thing that I would love to do after school hours is to really get re-engaged into the communities. I really mean it. It's something that helped me greatly in Billerica. And I think that's something that I really want to do again, because it's absolutely, the more you engage you are with the community, the better you are for it. That's what I would do. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time here and also for being such a wonderful host when we made the trip.
Thank you.
Good evening, Dr. Kalfoy. Thank you so
Thank you.
much for coming to us this evening. Most of my colleagues have taken up a lot of my questions. Thank you all. But I have a few unique questions. You had mentioned, or either through the budget process or through just the general education process, engagement of families and whatnot. We have a challenge with that in our district, and maybe part of that is the diversity of our district. Now, I would like to hear from you strategies that you employed within your districts that you worked in the past to engage, to increase that level of engagement from our families.
That's a problem, by the way, that all districts have, not just the diverse ones. It's always very hard to get parents involved, particularly younger parents, as they both work and have to deal with the time issues and time constraints and so forth. First, you've got to create those opportunities, and depending on the groups. One thing that we've done very successfully, particularly when you're talking about very diverse groups with different cultures and so forth, we've engaged the community leaders in those cultures in Arlington. It wasn't uncommon that in Arlington we engage the community leaders of the groups, whether it's their religious place or whether it's their community center and so forth, in organizing small family groups. And we would go there after school hours, after most of the time it would be evening, because that's when people are free from work, and we would go and address some of the issues with those. So we've got, in the couple of years only that I've attended numerous meetings, not just myself, other assistant superintendents as well, along with the superintendent, we would go and attend those to talk to the community. That was one way to get to that. The second way was really through the community groups. The community groups that you get involved with are really tremendous in helping you reach out to the various families and the various groups in town. That's why I see that community engagement is really, really important. And obviously you do work, as I said earlier, you're probably in the first 30 days until you get to know people and get to network with people, is you really reach out to the principals and trying to see if they can get you to those families that get involved with the schools, and then through them, hopefully get to others. It's really important also to create a two-way discussion with them so they can see your interests and maybe be interested in coming to talk to you about it. Something that I don't know if my group has mentioned it to you, one thing that I learned, and something that I brought with me from Arlington, and I thought it was incredibly powerful, is the concept of a Friday letter. The Friday letter is a letter that really I write to the school committee, not to the community at large, but we distribute it to the community at large if they want to. Obviously, it always contains non-confidential matters, but it's areas that the community gets to know what's happened and what is going to happen and what are we doing about it. And they will find ways. Some of them get interested in some of this and they will engage you. I think you just need to find those ways. The media can help you with that in some areas where they create those opportunities for you. And community engagement. You just got to be there. That's where your parents are, in the community.
Now, aside from the fiscal challenges that you experienced in Winchendon, were there any other significant challenges you had experienced in the past in any of your previous jobs that had broad ramifications across, the organization, and how did you manage the challenge, and what did you learn from it?
I think, unfortunately, most of the times, most of the challenges we had were really financial. They kind of drive everything else. Even when you have some other challenges, it tends to be, most of the time, at the root of it would be some financial one. Of course, you always have those other challenges, as I said earlier. In the case of the high school, we had it was actually worse than that. It was because it was a combined high school, middle school at the time, and they shared the same principle. The challenge there was clearly the leadership. And I've heard it enough from parents, I've heard it enough from teachers, I've heard it enough from everybody else. So you need to deal with it. So a lot of the issues that you face as a superintendent today, they tend to be either financial or HR issues. When you're working in the small districts, you don't have the luxury of have somebody like Mike over here who helps you with his expertise in HR. You deal with it. And it's not always easy. Sometimes I don't know how to deal with it, and that's where your networking with the professionals comes in handy by giving them a call and getting some support. Often it helps to call the professional associations such as MASC or MASS when we hit a very serious challenge in knowing how to deal with it. When you're a small district and you don't have all that it takes. You don't have the professionals around you to help you out. But by and large, our challenges are really financial and sustaining interest, if you wish, into the community by making sure that they get involved in the process. And when you're successful with it, it pays off. It pays off in great ways. In Billerica, it helped us pass the first override that was non-school construction. In Winchendon, it helped us get the first override as well for the school just last year, where we were able to get back all the net school spending shortage that the town hasn't paid us for several years. We were able to get it back, and they were forced to go to an override to be able to get it, and we passed the override. And as they told you, it was passed overwhelmingly with a very large margin. And that was a challenge, but you get it through engaging the community.
So my colleagues that had been able to attend your site visit had mentioned that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, you didn't go there. That's right. I confused you with.
Yeah, no, I was not able to attend that day. I apologize. Had mentioned that your staff had identified a number of cost-saving measures when it came to, rather than cutting staff, it was identifying other areas of savings. And so I wonder how you went about that.
About the various options this year that we're doing in addressing the various, it was tough. What we did is, as I said, I brought in everybody. I brought the the teachers' representation in there, the union. We brought in school committee. It was a really unusual approach to it, but everybody enjoyed it. Everybody was very happy with participating in the process. What we did is we identified several possibilities that we could go to cut what we needed to cut this year. And I said what I thought were my priorities and the community priorities as I understood them was that the cuts to the classroom, whatever touches the kids, shall be the last thing you want to touch. And we identified several alternatives. Then we took them back to the school committee in a public forum where the public had a chance to participate in that. And we heard from all parties, and it turned out that everybody was, at the time, we called it option C, what they wanted, and that's what we went with. And I think that's, maybe that's what they were referring to when they were talking about the cost-saving measures, and some of them involved cutting heavily in administration and talking to the current administrators that they were willing to take on more challenges and more responsibilities so that we cut very little in the schools. And I think that everybody was very happy to lend a hand to do that.
All right, well, that's it for my questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello, Mr. Kalfui, Dr. Kalfui. I'd like to thank you for being here today, and I'd also like to thank you for the site visit. It was very impressive. One of the things that really impressed me at the site visit was the one-to-one computing initiative that you had undergone in the district. I was just wanted to question how you would go about developing a similar program here in Lowell.
I think the first thing that you want to do is the way I did it 3 times. I did it in Arlington, I did it in Billerica, and now in Winchendon. The first thing is we talked with the teachers immediately and say, what is it that we can do to help you in the delivery of the curriculum? Because I think if you really want to increase your chances of one-to-one, that's what you need to start with. You need to define exactly the need. What is it that you want to try to achieve with that? Because if you just bring it in and just try to lay it as an additional layer to what you already have, I think you might get more resistance and less buy-in into that. So you really need to have a very good buy-in. So from the user's point of view, you had to deal with that immediately. I think you have to recognize that, as I said, I am a great supporter of technology, but I also have to tell you that technology is one of the most dangerous things because it runs the risk of dividing between the haves and the have-nots into that. So you have to have a proper feasibility plan, depending on your community and your finances and so forth, of how you're going to ramp that up, how you're going to roll it out, to make sure that you provide all the teachers and all the students with equal access to that. And one last thing with respect to rollout, before you even start talking dollars and cents about the technology you want to acquire, is what support system are you going to have? What PD is going to be available to the teachers? What are they going to learn to be able to assist them into what they're doing? The reason I'm saying that is back in the 90s when my first job in the K-12, I walked, and this is a person who loves technology, I live and breathe technology, and I walk into the schools and I find this the old Mac 2 that they were still covered with their cellophane, never opened, because the teachers had no idea what to do with them, because somebody had a great vision to find the money to buy those computers, but never asked the question, what do we need to do for the teachers? Do they really need them for what they want to do? So I think you really need to get involved with that first. You got to get a proper plan to do that. Get your parents. This is what we did in Billerica. We did get our parents involved with it. And then we developed a feasibility plan that we took back to the community. And as I said, I spend every day talking about that to various groups, explaining to them what we want to do, why we want to do it. And you know how many people told me that I was crazy trying to buy a laptop for every teacher, and why in the world would they need a laptop? And because way back then they could sit 54 students in the classroom with a board and a chalk, and they did just fine. And so you need to explain the benefits of doing that and what you're going to achieve from that. And then we got a great deal of buy-in from the community, and that's how you proceed with that. And it's not always about the dollars. And last thing, and I know I'm sorry, I'm a little bit long here in my answer, is that it is often better to achieve half the plan that you start out with, but have monies set aside for your training of the people who are going to use it in PD, then try to achieve all the plan and go short on that. It's really important not to.
Thank you, Dr. Kalfoui. That actually goes into my next question quite well. How would you develop and sustain a pre-K through 12 comprehensive professional development plan?
I think it goes back pretty much the same as if you're doing it for computers, or you're doing it for math, or you're doing it for anything else, is it has to be needs-based. It has to be needs-based. You have to make sure you utilize your data. Another thing that I'm big on is data. When I was in Bellerica, I used to drive the principal nuts in organizing these classes of teaching them how to use data and how to mine data and how to analyze student data. And we brought the early class of to the principals on how to use the data warehouse that they were putting together. And I think it's really important that you use all your PD, that it be exactly needs-based. And that's why it's really important to use student data. It's really important to use those evaluations for the purpose of creating PD opportunities. And it's important to get your PD. I don't know if you had a chance to talk about our PD committee during the visit. Our PD committee is dominated by teachers to tell us what is it that we need to do better for them so they can be better. Because otherwise, we will be just providing opportunities for the sake of providing them.
Good, thank you. My next question is, as the new superintendent in Lowell, what would be your most critical long-range objective for the district?
I think your critical long-range objective would definitely be how to sustain whatever initiative that you do, because often most districts, one of the dangers we run into is we come up with great ideas, and they are great ideas, and different parties come up with great ideas, and then we do great, and then just fizzle away at some point, and then die out. Is how to sustain the student, anything, particularly student achievement, not just work for it, but how to sustain it. So you need to be very careful in sustaining long-term goals and make sure that you can continue doing what you need to do. I think it really is important to work with the planners in the city in all various parts in informing you better to where we are going as a city. We talk about an influx of a lot of people from various languages, background. It's really important for us to understand that and understand how is that going to affect our classrooms in the future and be able to support that.
Okay, and just my last question, a lot of them have been asked already tonight. Have you been a participant in any school building projects?
Yes, I did in Bellerica, in the Parker School. Before I left, we got involved earlier on with the design of Parker School, and it was finished after I left, but in the early design, we got very heavily involved with that, particularly anything that had to do with the technology infrastructure and the classrooms and so forth. We got involved with that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, well, Doctor, this concludes the first round or the process, if you will. I think the committee would like to invite you to make a closing statement, if you so wish. On behalf of the committee, we want to thank you for your thorough preparation, as well as extending invitations for on-site visits, as well as any other information that has been asked and provided. So with that, we'd invite you to make a closing statement.
Thank you. First of all, I thank you all, and I thank you particularly to those who took the time to visit us. I hope you had a good time. I thank all the people who have received me in their visits. I think it was nice of them to take time out of their work to talk to me and inform me of the process and answer some of my questions. I'm absolutely delighted. I'm already very, very, I feel very honored to even that you brought me to this level. I think Lowell is a fairly large system. It's an honor just to be at this level, and I think I thank you for that. I certainly wish to see you again, so that goes without saying. And I will be very honored if I am selected to be your next superintendent. I know I'm ready for it. I know I can do it, and I know what some of the challenges are, and I will be very happy to work for you and to work for the city. Having said that, if I'm not your selected, I wish you all the luck, and I will be very happy to work as a colleague with whomever you select in the future. And thank you again for your time. Thank you.